to another episode of the LOOR Entertainment Podcast. I'm Andrew Southwick. On this episode, joined by filmmaker and proprietor of Hallford Entertainment, Cody Hallford. Cody, thanks for making some time for us here today.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here, man. I'm glad we finally got this together.
Yeah, and those of you watching and listening, this has been an interview in the making. And every time, honestly, it's been one of us got sick and couldn't do it. And schedule got in the way and couldn't do it. And then we got sick again and couldn't do it. And so if God didn't get us out of bed today, we wouldn't be talking. So
Andrew has been very patient with me. He's been extremely patient, and I'm sorry that I got sick so many times. I got to do something about that.
Dude, well, we were both sick the last time, so that's okay, man. True. But we are healthy now and as close to 100% as we can be. So glad to be here. And we're going to walk through a lot of Cody's career in film and production and the creative space. We're going to see some trailers from the work he's done. He is, of course, the producer, writer, creator of the Psalter, which is right now funding on LOOR, I believe, right?
Yes, that's right.
And so we're going to look at the trailer for that. We're going to see also, we're actually going to walk through a short film of his called Heartbeat, which a very important film. And we're going to do that kind of audio commentary style. So you're going to get to hear some behind the scenes stuff and some memories that he has of that production. That'll be later in the show. We've also got an upcoming feature called The Sage, which we'll talk about. And he recently had a short film doing very well in festivals, award-winning, in fact, called now I just had it in my mind, Hidden in the Wind. There we go. Hidden in the Wind, right? Now, so we're going to look at that. We'll see a trailer. We'll talk about that. So there's all kinds of stuff. And before we get going, I want to remind you see it at the bottom of the screen. Subscribe today at LOOR.tv, LOOR.tv, LOOR.tv. You can subscribe today and fund episodes, shows, productions like the Psalter, which will be our first topic of conversation. Right away, though, Cody, give us a little bit of your background. How did you get into filmmaking, and what are some of the things that you have done in your career that has brought you to this point?
Yeah. So first off, thanks again for having me. I'm excited to be a part of LOOR. And, I really believe in the mission of what these guys are doing here. And I'll never forget my conversations with John Speed and Marcus Pittman, Jason Farley, whenever I was talking to them about filmmaking and just my ideas and what I wanted to see come from, just Christian creatives, it was just so refreshing to have them actually listen and hear me out as a creative and to have their support, for years now in my career and everything that I'm doing has just been so pivotal. So it's just an honor being a part of LOOR. It's an honor being on this podcast right now. Really, really thankful that it exists. But anyway, so I got into filmmaking. I actually started out as an actor, and I started out doing theater as a little kid. And I was always interested in sports, but I kept getting these weird exertional migraines. It was a really weird thing, but a side story, but essentially I couldn't play sports for the longest time. And so my parents really were like, okay, well, he's interested in acting. Let's get him more into that. And eventually they signed me up for some film classes here in the Dallas area. And I just loved it. I loved telling stories through performances. I loved the entire process of filmmaking and, everything that even went into, that goes into the crew positions and all of it. So essentially, though, I was having problems getting work because I always looked older than my age in middle school and high school. So I would always go into these workshops and stuff with these agents and, casting directors or even doing auditions. And I would be in middle school and they're like, yeah, so which college are you going to? And I'm like, oh, I'm in middle school. And they're like, what? And for those of you who don't have context, on this, that's they always want you playing younger, especially when you're
they being like casting directors,
the industry
producers, they want you to play younger than you are. So if you look older when you're younger, that's a little bit of a handicap, at least in terms of Hollywood, right?
Exactly. So I suppose like they always want you to look younger. I suppose that's the goal, but especially because like a lot of the times they're just hiring people who might be college age and having them play high schoolers or having them play, middle schoolers, because they already have they're old enough to where they don't have to obey those labor laws with them. Yeah. So it's like, CW, you'll have like a TV show with, a bunch of high schoolers or something, and they're all people like in their 30s or whatever. I'm sure most people know. Yeah.
Well, maybe I'm whatever. I'll date myself. I don't care. Saved by the Bell, man. Yep. Classic after school. Saturday morning, but eventually after school fare. And yeah, they were all 30. But then if you think about it, I was talking to my wife about this. Maybe the subtle exception might be the Wonder Years. Remember Kevin and Winnie, they kissed on the first date and they were like legit 12 or 13. Yep. But honestly, you don't want to see 10-year-olds and 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds making out in high school. I mean, that's ridiculous. Anyway, I digress. Continue.
So, I was already working an uphill battle there. And so essentially that led me to start creating my own stuff. So that way I could build a demo reel. That way I could have something to showcase my acting talents with my own films, essentially. And so that's why you'll see like there's several stuff that like I'm starring in, because I love the acting aspect of things as well. And I still do, but it created this gateway into a passion for filmmaking and actually creating the stories and, from beginning to end. And honestly, building those skills has helped me get a lot of other work to just, put food on the table over the years. Like I never would have imagined myself like editing things and working on post-production. It just wasn't originally my passion, but I was good at it and I started getting work doing it. So, basically filmmaking and my passion for it and my love for getting into telling all these stories really did start with acting. But it certainly has grown into like this robust love for just the entire process and outcome for movies in general.
Did your own work that you were doing on your own, was that the creation of Hallford Entertainment and at its genesis, and then you started doing post-production and getting work that way? Yeah.
So essentially, like you always start out doing short films, and I've been doing short films over the years, but so that's where like the creation of Hallford Entertainment comes from, right? It's like just creating those own projects, but it also helped me land like other like marketing work, for instance, and just bringing a creative filmmaking lens to like nonprofit videos. Like it's just it created a lot of opportunity in different work areas, creating my own stuff essentially. But eventually, like, those short films, like doing the work in the video production, like, corporate nonprofit gigs, learning all that. I didn't go to school for this stuff either. I didn't go to school for film. I just learned and I just did it and just showed up to.
Tell us a little bit, how did you learn? Because now, so I do a lot of post-production work as well, producing and editing. I do news shows and that kind of thing. I did go to school like kind of after the fact and got some training, but most of my training in that was done because I had to. I had something I had to get done and I had to figure out how to do it. Was that how you learned? And what were some of what maybe were a couple of your early projects that you thought, hey, this is actually something good?
Yeah, just trial and error, man. Like it was just always trial and error, right? Like everybody knows it. Because you can, and I'm not saying school's not helpful, because it is, but at the end of the day, if you're not getting in there and if you're not just starting it and if you're not doing it, you know, like that's the best way to learn is to just get out there and start doing it, whatever your passion might be within the industry. But yeah, so I think one of the first projects that really, you know, I had some minor success and I did it again. I filmed it. It was a short film that I filmed for a demo reel, like just so I could have something, you know, to show agents and casting directors and stuff and send to them. Was a short film called Little Notes to Heaven. And it actually got into some film festivals. And I mean, we were filming this thing like, you know, it's not the best quality in the world. Like the thing is it's like on a little T3i camera. I don't know if anybody remembers those, but, you know, it just wasn't the technical quality that other people were putting out, but it was such a moving story that it actually got into some of these festivals and stuff. And yeah,
I don't mean to cut you off. What?
No, you're good.
What was Little Notes from Heaven about? What's the synopsis of the story?
So essentially, the short film is it's about this guy who starts courting this girl through giving her these little notes. And in the short film, you know, he passes away, and there's this like beautiful and moving scene there where she returns one of the little notes, you know, and it's like her way of moving on, basically. Mm-hmm. And it's like a real kind of like, the aim was to make it sort of this like art house romance thing. But the cool thing is that we actually based my first feature film off of that short film. And, you know, because it just seemed to be, I had created other short films, but it seemed to be a story that sort of universally resonated with a lot of different people. And again, like I didn't have funding for the feature film. I didn't have, you know, I didn't have a full scope of what the process was going to be like actually making a feature film. I just knew from some of the corporate and short film work that I was doing, but we just went out and we started doing it. And even that film ended up being so much more successful than I could have ever imagined it to be, because we're just like doing it for nothing. And, you know, we're shooting it on the weekends because we got to work during the week, and I got to figure out how I'm going to pay for the actors the next weekend, you know, by taking these other gigs and stuff. So yeah, it's just you know, if I didn't ever take that step of just saying, okay, I'm going to do this, if I came up with, you know, reasons why it might not work, or, you know, I wouldn't have this project that I'm genuinely proud of. And I'm glad that's out there and that's had the success that it's had. So just getting out and doing things in trial and error has been like basically the total movement of my passions and of my career thus far. And I mean, a lot of people are going to have that similar story. So, yeah.
Well, you've got, I mean, obviously you have a long and storied list of projects you've worked on, one of which, let's talk about specifically, is currently funding on LOOR. That is the Psalter. We've got the funding or the Funding Now trailer from LOOR. So let's check that out. And then you can tell us what the Psalter is all about.
Yeah, we'll do.
Thou hast placed the sand for the bound of the sea by a perpetual decree. As the hart panteth after the water brooks, so panteth my soul after thee, O God. And he hath put a new song in my mouth, even praise unto our God. Many, O Lord my God, are thy wonderful works which thou hast done. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more than can be numbered.
reminds me of Sit Ubu Sit from CBS.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, the logo of Hallford Entertainment is my dog. And I plan to, Lord willing, someday release an animated feature that's an adventure film about this dog. I digress. That's down the line. We got other projects we got to talk about right now. So
that's funny. So the Psalter, if I'm gathering this, you've got narrated, basically adapting all 150 Psalms. And I, back in my music days, songwriting days, I attempted to write 150 songs based on all the Psalms. I stopped at number 3.
Did you really?
Yeah, I stopped at number 3 and then like skipped to 48 and then 53 and, did kind of that thing. So I'm somewhere around like 10 or 11, but, eventually I'll get there. That'd be a good discipline to pick back up. But nonetheless, knowing what it would take to write a song about the Psalms, you're making filmed production. Tell us, how'd you get the idea and what can people expect if they give their loot on LOOR to the Psalter?
Sure thing. So the Psalter really began out of a question of like, why hasn't anybody done this yet? Like, why hasn't anybody created a series that is inspired by each chapter of the Psalms? Now, it could be because it is a daunting task of 150 chapters and, obviously the topics within them are so in depth and so huge that, that could scare off people who are in their right mind. But, me being, the creative that I am, I'm not always in my right mind about things. So,
yeah, well, that's what a lot of people don't understand. A lot of creatives like you and many of us, we're not terribly risk averse. And that can be both good and bad at the same time, Yep,
exactly. So sometimes you kind of get into things and you're like, this is going to be a great idea. And you don't think about like, 150, that's a lot. So that's
if
why
you think about that, that's like you bringing a show to one of the big networks and saying, and they want to buy, the pilot season, the pilot episode +4, +6, +8. And you're saying, well, let me sell you 150 episodes. So you're already selling syndication because that happens at 100.
Yep.
That's the kind of magnitude that you're talking about. But you're doing it.
Yeah.
Why is it worth it? And actually, before I ask that question, you're going through 150 Psalms. How do the narrations play out on screen?
Yeah, sure. So I fully expect if Lord willing, this series continues, I first off want to say that I fully expect that I would not live to see all 150 episodes get made. And here's what I mean by that is that the idea for this series is that it would give opportunity down the road to other filmmakers and other creatives to use the inspiration of the Psalms to create their own storylines. And so it's really an inspiration of like, obviously God owns the work of the Psalms and, and that's inspired scripture. And, I want to give everything to the Lord, all my projects, but obviously, especially that, I don't own that. Like that is not that's his, right? And I just think it would be a cool legacy to have just people be able to step in and dig into those scriptures and, get inspired to tell stories that are inspired by God's art and by his songs. And so there's that aspect of it. But as far as the narration's concerned, I get really, do you know who Terrence Malick is?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. So if you guys don't know who Terrence Malick is, he's a wonderful filmmaker. He did like Tree of Life and, To the Wonder, several different films. And he's actually a filmmaker here in Texas too, which is where I'm at, is Texas. But one of the aspects I like about Terrence Malick's movies is the narration and how it plays out so poetically and so, and it's not just like a straightforward narration either. Like it creates sort of this, like, if the narrative of the movie that's happening is a horizontal line, like the narration creates a vertical story within the narrative, if that makes any sense. And so I look at that type of format and I look at what could be with the Psalter and what could be with these Psalms and how, like, look, I'm not living in Israel, right? Like I'm not in, like, we're the church, we're the New Testament, thank God for that. And, but at the same time, we should be impacted just as much by the Psalms as we are any other part of Scripture, because all Scripture is equal. It's equal benefit for us. So what do those stories of the Psalms look like in people's lives here, in modern time, especially for the first season? And like, how do these narratives impact like our day-to-day life in what we're experiencing and what we're feeling? In the Psalms, like the first episode of the Psalter, it does kind of fall in this line of like, it's kind of dreamy, and it's not just taking from the Psalms in the first episode. The first episode is actually taking from different parts of Scripture, but it's just a show. It's a pilot. So it's to show people what this can look like. Right. And, so it is kind of dreamy and it's got kind of, this like relaxing flow to it. But man, the Psalms, there is such a variety of just emotion and circumstance happening there. And I think as artists, we have a sort of unique opportunity with this series to explore all of that. And sort of like a side mission of also exploring what all Christian artistry in creation and filmmaking can be as well. Does all that make sense?
I think so. One of the concepts that came to my mind was it really sounds like you're describing like an anthology series that can that can be helmed by different directors and writers. And much like you would see, I mean, I guess some of the famous ones, Twilight Zone was an anthology back in the day, but even, what am I thinking of? Tales from the Dark Side is the other one I'm thinking of that, and Tales from the Crypt was like that, but Dark Side I thought was cooler. But so where you have different filmmakers and actually, so have you ever seen From the Earth to the Moon, which was produced by Tom Hanks? It was an HBO miniseries. It's all about this NASA's original mission.
I know what you're talking about, though.
Missions, Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo. But it was filmed like an anthology. You had different directors, different writers. And so they took those stories and it didn't necessarily follow linear in terms of the events from episode to episode. But it would kind of jump forward in time and do these different things. And each one came through the vision of that director. So they had a unique spin. Some were more comedic, some were more dramatic, some more intense, all that kind of thing. And I'm picking that up from what you're saying in terms of the vision for the Psalter. Let me ask you this. Do you see the Psalter being, as the narratives being dramatized, or do you see it as more of almost a real life documentary as to how concepts are playing out in real life? Or can that be left up to whatever creative minds might be taking on that particular chapter?
Yeah, I think that there is a sort of openness to experimentation with that. I think definitely dramatized is like my goal is somebody, helming this first season. But I definitely think that it's a series that has flexibility to it in that regard, as to like what all it could look like. Just the only thing is that, the only let's say, structure that's really required from it is that has an inspired, that it has a narrative from one of the chapters of the Psalms. But what that could look like in the future, I mean, there are just so many ideas of like, where all that could end up.
So it could be, you could dramatize, for example, a filmmaker could take, or a director or screenwriter could take whatever, Psalm 3, Psalm 4, and look back at the history of that writing and do an episode on the literal historical history of Psalm 4 and bring that to the screen.
Yep.
At the same time, someone could take Psalm 139 and do a modern interpretation inspired by, so hitting themes and concepts, not necessarily historical retelling, but all, and then everything in between, as long as it's faithful to what God laid out in the Psalms. Yeah. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. So Andrew, maybe you should come in and direct one of the episodes for for the Psalter. I like those ideas. Those are really cool. Man. Yeah. So as long as it's staying true to what the Lord has inspired in that, and again, like I think especially in our modern culture, like we have and for lack of a better word, maybe you can help me come up with a better word, but the Psalms get sort of daintified, like they're dainty, like they're at least,
well, they're lyrical, so they can take on a softer tone than maybe the which can obfuscate the strength and the power that they have.
Exactly. So, but they're so deep and they're so intense sometimes. And, some of them can get so just like watered down in our modern culture, like even when people are creating songs from them and stuff. And like, I want to explore the fact that there's just simply like this wide variety of things happening within the Psalms. And I mean, this is the same way with the entire Bible, right? Like there's so much happening there. There's so much that the Lord has revealed to us through these things. And again, it's just like that can take so many different directions in the future. For this first season of the Psalter, it is an anthology series, but I do want to have a focus of focusing on stories that revolve around artists for this first season. And to me, that makes sense because the Psalms are songs, and you're dealing with artists who the Lord used to write these different chapters of these different songs. So with it being an anthology series, my vision for this thing is that it also does have sort of like a running, at least one running theme through each season. And this season, I think it would be really cool, especially like since it's on a platform like LOOR, which is so much about freeing the artist and, what all can a Christian artist do when they're freed from this box that we've created for the Christian artists. And to me, like the Psalter is going to, Lord willing, be a direct reflection off of this type of thing. So I think that the pilot episode, people will have a pretty good idea of what all that can potentially look like. And, the pilot episode is focusing on a singer, and, she's grieving, and, you don't see... You do. It's not that you don't see those stories at all within Christian media right now, but so much of it is so like Hallmark happy, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to get a really authentic,
and that's something we brought up before on this podcast. And I know people talk about it. I know that's one of the main criticisms of Christian media, Christian entertainment, but and movies, television, or music for that matter, is that there seems to be this watered down approach to it. And that takes away from the creative power and really the emotional impact that it can have when compared to, Hollywood or the mainstream music industry, and why that sound, why Aerosmith rocks and why Christian rock can't, like just why not,
right.
But I think that too, obviously, how the sausage is made when it comes to filmmaking. sometimes it's the studio influence and the suits and the execs, because they're selling in Christian entertainment, they're really selling to a pastor because they want that pastor to promote it to their church. And that's how they're going to get butts in seats and people to buy tickets. Well, to sell to that pastor, the pastor's got to answer to every single congregation sect within the church. So it's got to hit this middle of the road thing, but in so doing, it does lose its power. And it all of a sudden, everything is happy. Everything always ends with a smile. And I think that some of the reality of a life and the reality of the Christian life, the reality of a life following Jesus, is going to show that grief, the struggle, the sorrow. For crying out loud, 70% of the Psalms are laments. They're mostly sad anyway. Yep. So, you can argue that David, who wrote most of them, was a manic depressive, and that because he certainly had peaks and valleys and was very emotional in that way and impulsive. And you can read that through those Psalms. And I think for whatever reason, we don't think that's going to sell to the church, let alone to the masses. But I think that's exactly what both Christians and non-Christians alike are clamoring for. Tell us straight. I can relate to that pain. And if you want to have that pain and point it to Christ in different ways, I'm here for that, because that's hopeful. But if you're going to tell me that I have to smile all the time because I'm not allowed to frown, or I'm not allowed to be sad, or I'm doing something wrong, or I don't have enough faith if I feel that way, well, then I'm probably not going to be there for that, because that's not real life.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny story going along with that is that our first feature, Little Notes to Heaven, was the first place we sold it was PureFlix. And I'm grateful for that. It definitely, was a good learning experience on the Christian market and, just the movie market in general. But in that movie deals, heavily with grief. And I am proud of that film. It's funny though, because when we were talking to, some of the sales agents and the distributors and stuff over there, spoiler alert, I don't think this is too bad saying this, but nobody gets like saved in the movie. Okay. Like nobody goes from like, I once was lost, now I'm found, right? And as a matter of fact, like there are characters in there who, it's painfully obvious, like they're not believers. And it was funny because, one of the distributors was like, I was shocked nobody got saved. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, I kind of liked that about it. And I was like, yeah, unfortunately, like that's life. That's the story that we're living in right now. And, and that's real. And so I think that you're absolutely right. Like as Christians, we shouldn't be creating the Hallmark kind of genre is fine, but it's definitely shouldn't be the only thing we're doing. We should be speaking into everything.
Yeah, there's a balance. And I agree. I think that there is a time for the Hallmark version, if you will. I actually kind of like their cheesy Christmas movies. I think they help with the season, right? And so you can dig that, but there's so much more to life than that. And it's such a small sliver of life. And I think that's what you've got here is great. So right now the Psalter is funding on LOOR. And so I want to make sure that to invite those watching, those viewing, to send some of their loot over the Psalter's way so we can get that going. You gotta
fight the bears.
I know. Barely Biblical is a monster right now.
Right now. No, I love Barely Biblical. I love all the projects on there. But yeah, we got to take down the bears, dude.
There you go.
Do you want to fund the Bible or do you want to fund bears? Well, I guess the bears are the Bible.
They're Biblical.
I've destroyed my whole argument here.
That's it. You're done. That's it.
Yep.
But there is some crossover though, because Barely Biblical, and in the initial trailer, it's showing you David and Goliath, right?
Yep.
Well, David wrote the Psalms, the Psalter. So by supporting the Psalter. You're also supporting Barely Biblical because they're coming from the same source text. Come on, friends.
Yeah,
it's
maybe
not hard
I
math.
need to get, it's Mr. Tim Engel, right?
Yeah, Tim Engel, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I need to get him to do a Psalter Barely Biblical crossover, and we'll get
that
some
would actually be
live
cool.
actors with the Bears. You
know what? I probably shouldn't say this out loud because it'll give somebody with money an idea.
Yeah.
But you know how we have like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the DC Comic Cinematic Universe? There hasn't been really a production studio universe like that, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, a little bit with ABC TGIF because of spinoffs and stuff. And I guess, you know, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy. So there's the spinoff universe that existed in sitcoms, but that's pretty much dead now because sitcoms are gone. But I mean, can you imagine a production platform, just like you're saying, where Barely Biblical, where Tim Engel takes his Bears and does a Psalter episode? Oh my goodness. And I mean, I don't know. Telling you.
I mean, he can give me some of that magic that he's got going there with Barely Biblical. Like, no, like honestly, man, like I can't wait to see it. So I'm so excited about all the projects on there, you know, and it's stuff that you would never see on the other Christian platforms right now that Christians want to see. I want to see a Christian Western, you know, Black Rose Ballad, like dude.
We had Joel on awesome. One of the first episodes was Joel Burris, and we went all through. And the thing is, that's the other thing about LOOR and the creators that are a part of it is we're not like, you're excited to see the other projects too. And you're okay with that. And that's something, and you don't have that in a lot of other platforms or studios where there is competition for the big release weekend, for all the production dollars, that kind of thing. We're just putting this out and say, hey, you know, we have this idea for a story. We think it's something you'll like. Will you support it? And we're excited when other projects get their support and get out there, because that's also going to, that tide will lift all the boats, because they'll see Barely Biblical and they'll say, hey, what else is going on? Well, the Psalter's there. And so I definitely check that out. I do want to, with some of the time we have left, want to do a couple things here. We're going to switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
You had some recent success in the film festival world. Mm-hmm. And so I want to show the trailer of Hidden in the Wind, and you can talk a little bit about that story, a bit about the production and some of the awards you won and what that was like to be a part of the festival world with Hidden in the Wind. Let's check out the trailer.
All right.
When I was young and the storms would rage outside my home, every time I felt the thunder, my heart would stop. The darkness would set outside, and the first raindrops would fall. I felt the storm would consume me. But as the wind raged on, my mother would take my hand, and with a still, small voice would say, "Don't run with the wind outside. Stay here with me. Be here with me." And with that voice, the wind never felt too strong.
All right, Cody, tell us about Hidden in the Wind. Where'd you get the, what is it about, and where did you get the idea?
Yeah, so Hidden in the Wind, excuse me, is essentially about, this married couple who the wife is completely convinced that if they get, if there's a tornado in the vicinity, that there's going to be there's an entity within the tornado that hunts her and her family. So that's why, like, her whole life, she's tried to, be in areas where, that kind of weather doesn't exist there. But because her husband, he had this job in this area where it's a possibility, like this deep fear and anxiety comes to her again. So it's about the couple's struggle with that. And the idea was actually inspired by, my home got hit by a tornado several years back. And, North Texas, South Tornado Alley over here. And it wasn't even a bad tornado. It was just an F1. But I remember it was in the middle of the night, and I was having this nightmare about this demon who was trying to get through my window, and it was making this awful sound that tornadoes make, actually. And I woke up, and the tornado had just passed. It had just gone over our house. So that's sort of where like the idea spawned from, is like, what happens if you have a person that, or, this situation where there's something within these storms that, could be hunting people, or so is it, it's inspired by that. And it played at this year's Comic-Con back in July in the horror suspense category, and I couldn't believe it. It won. I couldn't believe it, dude. Like, even getting in Comic-Con was such a huge bucket list.
So I want to ask you about that. I mean, filmmakers obviously watch this podcast, and they're part of LOOR. Filmmakers are on LOOR creating and filmmaking. How did you get to Comic-Con? How did you break into that echelon of the festival world?
Well, so Comic-Con is cool because it's actually, Comic-Con's a free submission into the film festival. So if you have something that's action, horror, I think they even have a comedy category. If you have something that's related to any of those, like, this free, like, submit for it. And they get thousands of submissions though. So even getting in, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe, because, I produce with my family, and, it's just been such a huge bucket list thing of ours for the longest time to get in there, and it finally got in. And then, we went out there for Comic-Con, and, it's like, I think the horror section, maybe I shouldn't quote that. I believe it's supposed to be the most popular section of Comic-Con too. So there was like 14 different films, playing there, and we're sitting there watching these films. Like, a lot of them were just so good, and they had these huge budgets to them and stuff. And we didn't really have a huge budget for this thing. I don't know if I should be saying that, but I'll tell the LOOR fam, because we're all in this together, right? Apparently you can win Comic-Con, without having a huge budget on your project.
Let us know too, how does Comic-Con select its winners? The panel of judges? Is it, fan favorite? Who was it that bestowed the honor on you?
Yeah, it's a panel of judges. I think they have a rating system for it, but I just personally, and I'm not trying to I think if I have something for filmmakers, who want to achieve this type of thing, what I do is I just try to focus everything I can on the story. Even if things just technically aren't there, if they're you don't have to have this gigantic budget to tell a good story. Of course, it's always good to have money, but you don't have to, don't ever let that be a red tape to you in producing stuff. Use the resources around you and come up with a really good story with it. And I think Hidden in the Wind, I don't think it was because it was technically more significant than anything else, because some of these movies looked really good in Comic-Con. And I just think that, we didn't get feedback on it or anything, like sometimes you do in festivals, but from my perspective, all I can think is it must be the story. It has to be the story that just really resonated with the judges. So, I mean, it's everything, everybody did a great job. Cinematographer, the acting and everything is great. Lainey Randall, she's the star in it. And of course I'm in it too, right? Because it plays well for my demo reel. So,
there you go. Yeah.
But Lainey Randall, she's great. Hire her. She's an amazing actress. You LOOR filmmakers. But yeah, I just think that everybody came in and wanted to tell a really good story. And I think story is always going to be king in filmmaking, which is why you can get these movies where they throw millions of dollars at this movie and it doesn't have a good story. And it's not.
What do people always complain about with a movie? I mean, sometimes it's the acting, okay, but usually it's the story, right?
Yeah.
The ending sucked. The twists were unbelievable. I didn't care about the characters. That's all story. Yeah. That's all story. And again, some of it can be some of the technical aspects of it. But as I look at it, whenever I think about movies that I was disappointed by or I had higher hopes for, it's the story that let me down.
Yeah.
And, I can't tell you, thrillers that I hate are the, the multiple personality ones where it's going awesome and who's the bad guy and it's them. Really?
The first
it was the same,
cool, right?
Gosh, maybe once when Alfred Hitchcock did that with Psycho, then okay, I'll buy that. But after that, no. And it's the same. I'm sorry, I've got to say this. It's not a LOOR thing. It's not a Halford Entertainment thing. But I think I'm not alone. I think that was at least my issue with Indiana Jones 4. I would put up with Shia LaBeouf being able to swing on jungle vines and keep up with the Jeep. That was fine. Actually, that was choreographed pretty well. But aliens? No. Anyway, I've said my piece.
Don't even get me started on Indiana Jones, man. I'm a huge fan of the original 3 movies, and the 4th and the 5th one, I was just like, why?
I haven't seen the 5th yet. My son wants me to watch it because he's afraid it's going to suck. And so he wants me to watch it and waste 2 hours of my life and tell him if he should. And so I'm like, okay, I see how it is.
Yeah. Don't even, we won't go down that road because we could be here for a while.
All right. I got 2 more questions about Hidden in the Wind or about your Comic-Con experience. And then we're going to move on.
Yeah.
First question. This is not an ego question, honest question. When you're at Comic-Con, you're watching these short films, you're seeing your competition. How did you honestly feel about your chances of winning? Or were you even thinking about that? Like, so for example, I've when I was touring with my band, we'd play on festivals and things like that. And sometimes we were the headliner, sometimes we were right above the headliner, sometimes we were at the beginning of the day. And you can kind of gauge the audience and how well, and are they getting bored and this, that, or the other. But you also know objectively, okay, that band is awesome. We're better than that band. We're going to close out the night. I feel good about this one. This can make it. Not in the ego sense, but just like, okay, I know what I'm bringing to the table and this is going to work. Were you sitting there saying, dude, Hidden in the Wind has got this. That award is going to be hidden in my pocket when the night is through? Or were you like, dude, we're head and shoulders with some really good films. And again, objectively, no false Christian modesty here. This is LOOR. This is real. Go.
Okay, so my fellow creators are probably going to be embarrassed that I share this, but there's context to it, okay? There's context, but we did not go to the award show.
You didn't go to the award show? Here I am with my product placement.
Well, you can spew that out. So we were convinced that we had done, like, we were convinced that we had done the most we were going to do at Comic-Con. And, oh gosh, I feel like there's going to be like listeners that are like, oh, you idiots. But no, we didn't, so there's just, there's a lot of nuance and context to it, but essentially, like, we were having to stay in Los Angeles because Comic-Con is a huge deal. For those of you who don't know, like, it's just a huge, and obviously there's so much more to it than just like a film festival there. Yeah. It's just a really big deal. And so all the hotels in San Diego are booked up and stuff, right? And so it just so happened that our plans led us to where we were going to have to stay in Los Angeles. So we're having to drive down like 2 hours to San Diego, and we were already tired from a couple other things. And we're sitting there watching these other movies, and we were listening to the panels, and people have like all these big budgets, and, there was some really solid shorts in there. And so the question came about of like, okay, well, what are the chances? What are the chances we're actually going to win this thing? Like, are we going to drive back 2 hours to, sit at the award show and watch somebody else win? And, oh gosh, I can't believe I actually am sharing that story. I feel so embarrassed as a creative, like doing that, but that gives you a real solid answer of like how confident we were. And, but there was,
I'll say this in your defense though, that I bet most of us would feel that way. And probably some of them at the award show, if they were in your position, you look at the other filmmakers there, you know what it takes to do it. And it's not even in a comparison way, but just acknowledging, dude, those things are on fire, man. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's just really hard to be objective about your own work. So it just is. You just do the best you can, and you still love it, but sometimes it's just really hard to be objective about your own work. And I mean, I watched Mission Impossible again, the next day, and I get this message from somebody else who I had met there, like, "Hey, you guys, like, I think you guys just won." And I was like, "What? Like, are you sure it was our movie? It's Hidden in the Wind, right?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I still was like, maybe she's getting us mixed up with somebody else. So I messaged like the point of contact there. And the person was like, "Yeah, you guys won. Like, where can we send the award to?" And and wow. I was like, dude, like, we're there with our team. And I think at the time we were in the car and we were like, "Oh my gosh, like, I can't believe we just, Comic-Con is a big deal to us." So sure. It was, it was definitely one of those, like, just like, thank you, Lord. Like,
did you get to do anything cool at Comic-Con? Like, did you get to see any panels? Did you get to meet anybody cool? This is pure fanboy talk. All right. So we're going to take off.
Okay, man.
This is the non-professional part of the show, because, so I did one of my third album I did in North Hollywood. And I was, honestly, I won't even lie, I was celebrity spotting the entire time I was there, and just trying to get, just say hi. And I met a few of them. I did, and they were all nice and all that kind of thing. But I'm always curious when people go to Comic-Cons and stuff, if they got to have any fun little mini adventures.
So, man, I mean, again, I feel like I'm probably like pissing off some of the audience here, but I'm a movie guy, right? So like so when I think of Comic-Con, and there's so much other stuff to it, it's a comic book convention, essentially. But I'm into the movie panels, and I'm a big fan of all the Comic-Con movie panels. Watch those for years, right? But we finally get into Comic-Con, and the strike happens. Like, all these strikes are happening, so nobody was there for any of those movie panels. Yeah, I know, and I know I shouldn't like complain or anything, but it was a bit of a bummer to not get some of those like Hall H panels and stuff. Because I'm a nerd in that way. Like, I'm a huge like superhero comic book fan, and I love movies and stuff. And
you're probably the same. I mean, I've lost probably years deep diving on YouTube, watching all the Comic-Con panels I can about shows and movies I like. I mean, especially with Cobra Kai, I'm addicted to those panels and the show, by the way. But every one of them, I want to see all of them. And it's weird. They'll say the same thing year after year at every Comic-Con because they have answers, but I'm here for it.
I would have loved to have gone to a Cobra Kai panel. Like that would have broken me. But yeah, it was just, So unfortunately the strikes were going on, the year that we got in. And it was a bummer, but I still had a great time, and I still had so if you know anything about Comic-Con, like, just walking around and people watching is so fun. And just seeing it. Now, some of it's like not fun because some people come in some really like weird costumes, but like I saw some things that maybe I wish I hadn't there too. But there's also just some really cool costumes, some really cool dress up there. And there's still like, in the merchandise section is just like, it's so unique, and there's so much happening there still. That's cool to go to. I still went to a lot of the like merchandise, like, movie intellectual property stuff. Like you got to get Star Wars in, like, and go look at all that stuff. It's super cool. I'm a nerd about those things. So
I'm with you. I love memorabilia of all kinds and going through and seeing the props, and I want to know how they work. And I'm the kind of guy, like, I like to go on theme park rides, but I want to go with the lights on and walk around the sets and see how it is. And that does not ruin the magic for me. And actually, for me, it makes it better.
Yes.
The next time around. One time I got stuck on Pirates of the Caribbean in Disney. Maybe it was Disney World, I guess, here in Florida where I am. And it was at the end. Did you get up
and start walking around in the water? Like they have a video of a person do that recently, and they got kicked out of Disney forever for doing it or something. Keep going.
I'm a germaphobe, so I'm not getting in that water for all the money in the world. But
good for you. Yeah, neither am I. So
nope,
we're the smart ones.
Exactly. We'll be alive anyway. Yeah. But what they did was they put a bridge across the water so you can walk off to the nearest exit, which is through whatever set you're stuck by.
So you walked the plank?
And so I walked the plank off the Pirates of the Caribbean into the treasure room where Jack Sparrow's animatronic was sitting. But as I'm going by, like, I touch stuff because I'm not a toucher because, again, I'm a germaphobe, but I want to know what it is.
Yes.
And it's all the shiny rubber stuff that the movie prop. But it was so cool, and then to see the back of the animatronic, and then I couldn't stop and gaze. But like I like that stuff, and the same as you, I mean I geek out on that dork number one, and I have embraced it at this point in life.
No matter how you feel about Disney, as a company, like Disney Imagineering should always deserve an extent of our respect historically, because they're just so creative. They're just so creative with things. And it's just inspiring being in those types of environment. Like, man, it would be a dream of mine to be able to create a theme park or something someday. I'm sure there's probably a lot of people that feel that way, but like, it's just, and I feel like there is something like just so innately, like biblical about that, I guess, because like you're representing the creator and creating these things,
Well, it is biblical. Also, it's based on storytelling.
Yeah.
And Jesus, when you see him teaching, he's teaching in parables. He's teaching in stories. The universal language of humanity is stories. Amen. And we can all identify the good guy and the bad guy. I believe that's because of the Imago Dei. We're created in God's image. So we recognize a morality that's closer to right than not. And we sympathize with that. That's how we know Superman's a good guy and Lex Luthor's a bad guy. Yep. All around the world. Everybody will understand that and recognize it, or in any story. And so what you're talking about is taking this love of stories and sharing it in different ways. And there's filmmaking, Hallford Entertainment, and things like we're talking about today. But then there's the other things that, like, man, but I really want to immerse myself in these worlds. And I absolutely get that. And I do. One of my hero daydreams is a theme park. And I'm not going to tell you what it is on this broadcast. I'll tell you off air.
Okay.
I don't want somebody to steal it. You have to remember,
though, okay? Because I want to hear it. I'm all about that kind of stuff.
It is an awesome idea.
Okay.
And I'm keeping it to myself. I'll share it with you, but not on air. Unless you have deep pockets and you're willing to make sure that I maintain creative control, I'll share it with you if you're watching. All right.
No, I would want one of my movies to be in your theme park. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Like I want to create something good enough to make a theme park ride out of it. And I know Disney's not going to take my stuff probably. So.
Dude, Hidden in the Wind is already there. And again, I can't see, I don't want to, I got to be careful because this is where we get into intellectual property.
Okay.
And I got to protect. Not that I'll ever get there. Anyway. All right. Okay. Let's get back on the track here. Okay.
Sure.
Well, real quickly, I do want people to know about the Sage, which is an upcoming LOOR project. So I'm going to show about 90 seconds of this preview, and then you can tell us briefly what that's about, because we're going to do something I think a little unique, at least for the LOOR Entertainment podcast, is we're going to show Cody's short film Heartbeat in just a couple of minutes here. And he's going to walk us through, like audio commentary style, what was going on in the making and the storytelling and all that kind of thing. And so I want to be able to make sure we have enough time to do that before we have to wrap. But I want to make sure that we mention Sage. So let's take a look at a little bit of this preview. I'm going to stop it probably mid-sentence, so just forgive me for the awkward stop, and then we'll go on from here. Let's check it out.
Hi, I'm Cody Hallford, the filmmaker for the new romance drama feature, Sage. Sage is a character-driven spiritual odyssey that tests the ideologies of a young couple indoctrinated with a New Age belief system. With Hollywood's continued resentment toward films with an authentically biblical worldview and the current Christian film market's demand for cookie-cutter narratives, LOOR is the best platform for a movie like Sage. LOOR is giving us the creative freedom to tell the story of these characters, how it ought to be told. The New Age ideology helps serve the background of our two main characters. Upon completing the screenplay and pitching it to a few unnamed Christian companies, these companies deemed the realistic portrayal of the New Age ideology too controversial for the current Christian market. Not so with the founders of LOOR. They recognize Sage as a forerunner of films that will confront the raw, honest truth of the human experience.
All right, let's kind of right there. So Sage, you're taking on New Age and exposing New Age philosophy, New Age ideology, certainly in contrast with, the Christian perspective that you come from. Man, why take on such a behemoth of a topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's just it's sort of like New Age is seeped deeply into our culture, our culture right now. And I mean, really New Age, if you know anything about it, it's really just like modern paganism, basically. It's a salad bar of different things.
And it has seeped into most of our culture and including the church. We actually say things and approach things. I mean, karma is another example of that.
Yeah.
We all say that as if, good karma, bad karma, that kind of thing, but that's New Age, that's Eastern philosophy, so on and so forth. It's become such a part of our culture. We don't even question it, and we don't even realize it when we are invoking it. And that's true for Christians or not.
For sure. And I think that, one of the key points of Sage is really just asking the question, what is truth? And it's not so much, in a debate form, but more of just a storytelling form and seeing how that plays out in different characters' lives. Like because New Age is like, it's basically of an admittance of like, there's no real truth. It's a variety of different things. Your truth is your truth, right? And obviously that's completely, that's the complete opposite of Christianity. Jesus is truth, and Jesus is the truth and the only truth. And so I think Sage, it's a really fascinating story because it takes this couple who are deeply rooted in this stuff, and it takes this male character who basically, this woman who he's in this relationship with is his entire world, and she's everything to him. And essentially Sage begs the question of like, okay, what happens when the Holy Spirit basically starts convicting this dude in his life with the truth of the gospel? What happens to that relationship? Like, how does that play out? And the thing is I think realistically, it's just not pretty. Like, it's just, and there's just like, there's a lot to it. And, and Sage dives into all of that drama.
And that's very rich. I was just having a conversation earlier today, actually, about how when people are confronted with Christ, we're all Jesus says that we are Gentiles, that we're ingrafted into his vine. So we're from another tree. He takes us from there and ingrafts us into him, the vine. Well, if you take a branch from a maple tree and engraft it onto a oak tree, I'm just spitballing.
Yeah.
It's going to take, let's say, and it's going to take some time for that maple branch, for those previous nutrients to get cycled out and to be fully replaced by the oak nutrients. Okay. So when people are confronted by Christ, I think one thing that we don't really realize, and that's what's called sanctification, is it takes time for the nutrients of Christ and the truth of Christ to transform an individual spiritually. And so, and you're talking about not just converting somebody to a set of doctrinal positions or mental essentia, but changing their whole life, their whole worldview. Everything they thought was true isn't. And it changes how they see everybody. It changes their relationships. This is not a small thing, this task of evangelism. And from what I'm hearing, this story is a way to demonstrate that kind of hurdle in the spiritual transformation process.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, just, and again, just in maybe some of you even know stories or have, or this is your story, maybe even, just imagining like having somebody who is just literally your world too. Like it dives into how it affects relationships as well. And I mean, at the end of the day, hopefully not giving too much away, but what are you required to give up? To follow Christ, and are you willing to lose everything essentially? And I think that we do get some decent movies that do ask that question, but it's often, or just even stories, but they're often more related to, these people who are in maybe, situations where, I mean, I'm thinking of like, maybe the Middle East, for instance, where like maybe you're in an Islamic, culture where you have to give up everything in that sense. Hey, actually, we could probably use more of those stories too in an authentic way. But, I've never seen anything quite like this. And that's why the story fascinates me as a Christian and as a creative, because it's not only a good story, but it's also, I feel, super helpful to see that play out in people's lives. And it's informative in a way that's not like, again, it's not like in a debate form or anything. You're watching a story play out. So, it's pretty cool. This was, for those of you who don't know, this was actually the first project that I brought to LOOR before the Psalter, brought it to them, near the beginnings of their creation and everything. And I remember Marcus and John specifically liked the fact that it had been rejected by some of these other Christian streaming places. And it's not because like they didn't particularly like the story, but again, it's just like the authentic portrayal of even the philosophy of the New Age and everything, and the way that the story plays out. They didn't feel like it would play well for their audience. And you know what? Maybe it doesn't.
They might be right about that.
Yeah. So, but that's why it's so important to have an audience like LOOR with people who want this sort of authentic storytelling. And I want to let everybody know, it's not that you shouldn't have morals in the way that you make movies or anything. Right. You don't just want to be like there are morality lines, I believe, within filmmaking, of course. But again, it's aiming for that authenticity there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And different, again, with LOOR, you don't have the same suits looking down. I think probably John and Marcus looked at your rejection as a badge of honor, as like, hey, and you're over the target for what LOOR wants if you were rejected by those who shall not be named. So, but again, they have probably good reasons for that, both in terms of their own business philosophy and audience engagement and their own just business model. So you don't necessarily, disparage them for that decision. It's just that's the way it is, and it worked at LOOR, and that's another one we're excited to see upcoming.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the grand finale of the show. This will be interesting. I haven't done this before. We've done some Pastor React where we take in movies that either portray God or talk about God or portray Christians, and we talk about the theological and the historical accuracy and the entertainment value. Well, we're going to do a little bit of a behind the scenes audio commentary in real time. So I've asked Cody if it's okay. We're going to play his short film, The Heartbeat, and we're going to watch this through. And as we do, Cody, anytime you want to stop, just say, hey, stop it right here. Give us some insight on the scene, what was shooting like that day, nerd stuff. This is, put on the nerd hat.
I've never done DVD commentary before on one of my films. I'm super stoked for this, man. Like, I can't believe you're asking me to do this. Like, this is awesome.
Right? For a nerd, this is a high honor.
Yeah.
And so this will be fun. First, I don't want to cut you off, but go ahead. You can finish your thought, but I also let us know what Heartbeat is about and why you made it, and then we'll start it.
Exactly. So that's what thank you for that. That's exactly. I was going to give some context. So essentially Heartbeat is a film that we did for a nonprofit. And, a lot of the times for nonprofits and stuff, when you're telling their story, you get a lot of talking head videos, a lot of just documentary style stuff. And not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but in our pitch to this nonprofit, Lifesavers Foundation, located here in Dallas, Texas, in our pitch for it, we wanted to pitch our strength as a company, which is narrative storytelling, we believe. And so our pitch was to create a narrative story for this nonprofit that actually played at their luncheon, which Tim Tebow spoke at. And so we really wanted to come up with a story that helped represent an aspect of their work, which is, they believe in the sanctity of all life, and they believe, that they believe in saving babies, like basically. And so we wanted to create a story that represented that in a really moving way, which, hopefully you'll see and agree that it's executed well.
All right, well, let's check it out. And again, Cody, anytime you want to stop, just start talking. I'll pause it. And when you're done, we'll hit play again. Here we go. This is Heartbeat.
What's it mean to feel safe? To have a hand that holds you, that gives you the courage to face the world. Otherwise, we might be out in the darkness with no light in sight.
No, he just packed.
So, first and foremost, hopefully you can tell the sort of, again, Terrence Malick type inspiration that's being put in here, right? It's almost like something you might see on the Psalter. And again, the lovely Lainey Randall is starring on here. And so we did Hidden in the Wind before this movie, and you might be thinking, oh, well, he's just hiring her because, maybe she's his friend or whatever, right? But she went through the entire audition process, and the nonprofit just genuinely thought, she was the best, and, very talented. She's just really a truly terrific actress. And if you've seen Hidden in the Wind, you know that. And, watching this movie, you'll know that too. So, also too, I thought I'd point out that we shot this on the red Komodo, and just wanted to go for like a really, again, Terrence Malick, natural feel, use all natural lighting on stuff. And basically we just booked this Airbnb out here by the lake, and we shot several different scenes here with our actors. So yeah.
How long was the shoot in total for this?
The shoot itself was 2 days. So so we did our on the location at the nonprofit site that'll be coming up here for a day, and we also did the rest of the scenes in a day. So it's the story. I like to think of it as like kind of split as a narrative and a documentary, as far as its style goes. So we have like our Terrence Malick like narrative spots here, but then we also kind of dive into like a more documentary style piece that you'll be seeing here in just a few moments.
Gotcha. All right, well, let's continue.
Just things and left. He completely freaked out when he found out. I am just already so far behind. And I don't have anyone here. And I don't want to. But I just cannot take on another person. It would be impossible.
Where do we find that light? Where do we find that hand that holds us?
Okay, I'd like to say something else here too. With this story, we wanted to represent the woman in this situation that just really feels like, killing her child is her only option. And, and that, again, that's the sort of like, no matter how we feel about that, and, no matter how wrong that is, that's real, right? Like that's a real situation that we're dealing with. So, I think, it was really important to us with the story that our character had that angle and felt that way. Not because like we agree with what's happening, of course, but more so because we just wanted to bring like this authentic experience of what happens when you have a person that, for whatever reason, they just literally feel like that's the only thing they can do, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously that's where the messaging of the nonprofit comes in, to where it's like, no, there are other options.
Yeah,
you're not alone. Okay,
all right.
How do we release the anchors that hold us down in that pit of fear, that certainty of impossibility? Where is that light in the hand that helps those souls?
You see that little donut right there? That's the lunchbox for baby. Yeah. And then right off to the side of it, hanging out right there, that is the baby. And do you see inside of it something that's flickering? Do you see it? Yeah. That is a baby's heartbeat. Let me see if I can get the sound on it.
I'm sorry, this is at the nonprofit, right?
Yeah, sorry. This is this is their mobile unit.
Okay.
The Dr. Spot mobile unit, and is what they do is they give free medical care to children, and they're moving. So we created this video because they're moving into giving free medical care to women, and their main thing is that, like, obviously they want you to keep your baby. Mm-hmm. but then they want to be able to take care of the woman and her children for, as long as they need it too. So that's their big thing. Sorry, I probably should have talked about that before.
No, that's okay.
No. And you'll also see that they have an upscale resale store too, that by their donations, they're able to give and provide for these medical centers that help do this work. So yeah.
Would you like a picture? Yeah. Could you say hi, Mom?
What does it take to walk through something with someone so that a mother and her children won't go home hungry?
Jesus, I just thank you, God.
Okay, so I'll say something else. It's so hard with this one because it's like I forget how emotional, like it pulls me in emotionally still. So Lainey's performance is so moving in this movie. So a couple of things technically about what's happening is that obviously we're actually in this mobile unit, and it's a really small crew, and we're dealing with a lot of tight spaces and stuff, and hopefully you can sort of tell like the switch of like just kind of like some of the zoom ins and stuff, like it's just moving into kind of a more documentary style. And it's because we literally just we didn't shot list this section. We literally just like take Lainey through the process and what you guys do and what all that looks like, and we'll just start shooting it. And so we're in there, and we're doing this sonogram scene, and it felt like you were actually watching this happen. And so me and some of the other crew were like there, like actually like getting tearful watching this whole thing, because the nurse practitioner she's not an actress. That's the actual nurse there at the doctor's spot, and she's like actually comforting Lainey and everything. And it was just a really like wild experience. But
how scripted was this scene, or was it where when you asked the nonprofits to take Lainey through it, did they just do what they normally do and Lainey responded?
Did what they normally did. Yeah, we couldn't really script this scene at the time because we didn't necessarily want to, because we wanted it to feel as authentic as possible with this experience happening. And obviously the sonogram picture wasn't actually there, but that is so I had some people part of the crew is like, what does the baby look too developed? Does it look? That's an 8-week-old child. That's actually what it looks like at 8 weeks. And also too, like the mom doesn't necessarily always show as much then either. So that was like, that all went into it, right? Of like trying to figure out, okay, what is this actually going to look like? And we had even some, other sonogram people say like, hey, like this is actually, like this really actually does work. And, this is what this whole thing would look like too. So it's things that you don't necessarily always think about going into it, but just a lot of technical stuff that you have to deal with in something like that. That
does show up because, again, you remember like sitcoms when they would have an infant or anything, they don't actually, it's usually not an infant. They're, a few months old and they look young or they'll be little, but it's kind of the same thing where that the attention to detail of here's an 8-week-old baby in the womb. This would be the appropriate, you wouldn't necessarily be showing, you might not even know. And so that all checks out for the authenticity of the story. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So another thing, just story wise too, is that this is a nonprofit that does share the gospel with people that come in, and so obviously that's a really important aspect there too. But yeah.
so that those who need the help will find it, so that not one, but 2 lives might be saved.
Daddy, when's Grandma coming?
Here she is.
Grandma!
Girl, so beautiful. Look what you got.
Daddy gave it
Hi, son. How are you?
My mother was offered a hand of help, a light in the darkness. And she has watched her son grow. She's held her granddaughter in her arms, all because she was given that courage to face the world.
Yeah. So thoughts on that. I would say that overall this story, we got exposed on LOOR, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Laura Klassen and just those great shorts. I would say Exposed does the necessary job of showing the horrific reality of abortion and everything that's going on there. And like, you don't ever see anything like Exposed, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just so necessary. And, but whereas with this, our goal was to show the beauty of family legacy and like the outcome of life, you know, and, you know, doing the right thing. And, like here you have this, you know, you have this life who's on this sonogram unit who grows up to be this man with his own children and with his own life. And, you know, like, so I just think we really aim to tell a story that was going to be in the same sense that Exposed does, that was going to be super hard for anybody to look at it and say, well, but you know, like it's just like, how can you argue with the beautiful aspect of this? And, you know, of course, there's always going to be people who still, they believe in the power of choice and all that, but that really was the goal. And as you can see, like we aged Lainey there. That was fun. And like,
what was that process like? Well,
so a lot of it is just in wardrobe, and because we weren't trying to make her look too old, and you know, a lot of it was just trying to find like just different, you know, creases and stuff to sort of focus on a little bit, because like really when you look at things like people don't necessarily look like that different, you know, when a couple of decades passed by between there. So subtlety was the key there, because we didn't, you know, again, we don't have like just like all this money to play with. So
you couldn't afford Peter Jackson and Weta to come do some work for you.
We had the same people that did the orcs and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
They did a great job. And as you can see, like the ending, you know, very Terrence Malick inspired with the shots, and like even with the reveal of it being that's not her daughter, like that's her son and that's his daughter. Like that was really important to us to show that this is a generational outcome in this story.
Yeah, we often think about, and it is, yes, the life that is murdered when an abortion happens, but we don't think about the lives that don't have a chance to exist because we ended the life of the one through whom God may have brought those other people. And that's what struck me at the end of it was that generational piece. That granddaughter's not there if the character had aborted her son. So that message comes across loud and clear.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So my goal with it was to make Tim Tebow cry. Tim Tebow unfortunately did not stay for the short film, but a bunch of other people cried in the audience. So that was a super cool experience getting to do that.
Excellent. Well, Cody, we have taken so much of your time and you have given so much of your time generously. We know we're going to have you back because obviously the funding is still going on for the Psalter, and we've got the Sage coming down the pike as well. And you're keeping busy with other projects as well. So we definitely want to have you back on. But for now, thank you for being on this episode. Is there anything that I didn't ask, anything I didn't cover that you want to make sure that we talk about here before we wrap up?
Well, first off, I'm happy to come on and do this anytime, brother. So you're a joy to talk to. I'm happy to be a part of LOOR and everything that these guys are doing. So it's truly a privilege getting to do this and getting to chat. And it goes by fast for me, at least.
It does.
So, we just have to try not to get sick when we schedule it. So
please, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, as far as, anything else, we're working on developing another feature right now called Tenebrism. And we figured we would try to go off of, whatever hype we have with the horror suspense, Comic-Con win. And I just so happened to be writing a horror suspense film while all that was going on. And Tenebrism's are really another, again, cool for the LOOR audience because it's about artists. And it's about how important they are. And it's basically a story about artists fighting monsters. So hopefully that catches your intrigue. But yeah, excited to be, we're looking for investors on that right now and excited to be in that process. Other than that, just our socials. If you want to follow me, Cody Hallford, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. YouTube's Hallford Entertainment. You can also look up Hallford Entertainment on the socials. I got to get on X, formerly known as Twitter. Got to get on there still. But yeah, Cody Hallford or Hallford Entertainment. You can follow us there.
And we've got HallfordEntertainment.com scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So that's always a good catch-all if you don't know where to go on social media. But yeah, Cody's everywhere. Search for him on all the local haunts, usual haunts, and you'll find him there. So once again, Cody, thanks for your time on the podcast today. And I'm for Cody Hallford. I'm Andrew Southwick. This has been the LOOR Entertainment Podcast. Thanks for sticking with us on this episode, and we will see you next time.